Welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're looking at the speech Barack Obama made, his first one as president in Berlin. He went there as a candidate in 2009. With us to talk about it from Berlin, Jörg Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Atlantic Review. Jörg, who was at that speech, just very briefly, Jörg Wolf, what did you think of that bulletproof glass there? That is it really that dangerous at the Brandenburg Gate?
I was shocked when I saw it. I was super surprised because when Ronald Reagan was speaking on the western side of the Brandenburg Gate, there was a glass facing to the east to protect him from the GDR, from the Soviets, but there was no glass in between him and the crowd. And here Obama had glass behind him and in front of him. That was surprising. I mean, I'm not an intelligence officer, so I can't tell you whether this kind of security is necessary. But it seemed drastic because the square is pretty much secured from all sides. All the participants were vetted in advance. There was a very long way from. It was like half a mile away where we had to check in and walk to the gate.
It was, in your view, it was overkill. Also with us, welcome back to Tyson Barker of the think tank, the Bertelsmann Foundation. Thank you for joining us from Washington here in the studio. Anne Dessine, who teaches at the University of Paris at Nanterre, west of Paris. Also with us, Martin Untersingen, the author of Anonymity on the Internet, which is published in French, and Anton Kozlov of the American Graduate School. Welcome back to all of you. Time at this point to welcome Nicholas Rushworth, who does our Media Buzz segment. How are you, Nicholas?
Hi to you, Francois.
Obama's speech leading to lots of historical puns and references.
Indeed. Hi to everyone as well. I want to go first to this newspaper in Germany, Tageszeitung, and we can see there the picture. And it is not a picture that we would expect of the Brandenburg Gate, but another one. And the headline in this...
Culling Ronald Reagan's quote, right?
Yeah, Mr. Obama opened this gate. And of course, what do we see there? I can perhaps show you a little bit bigger. Guantanamo Bay, the prison camp. So, of course, Obama, the first day of office, 2008, remember that? He said, I am going to close Gitmo. Now, in last few weeks, he said, again, I'm pushing to close Gitmo. The Germans are telling him black and white in Tageszeitung, do it. Overcome those obstacles in Congress. Get on with it. So the mood in Germany is not, in the press anyway, I've been looking at the papers, is not too kind. What we're seeing over and over...
By the way, it's a promise that he made again in his speech, and it'll be interesting to see how the German press writes it up in the morning.
It will be. There's a lot of stuff about his visit, of course. This is to sum it up, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing not the Yes We Can logo, we're seeing Yes We Scan. So but Obama's got a bit of a PR issue there.
That a reference to the cyber snooping scandal that's been unfolding.
Absolutely. Edward Snowden and what we're calling the Prism surveillance scandal. Let me go to the tabloid Bild. Of course, it has this take, which is to amuse its readers here. That picture actually is from Bild, but still with that, there you can see a headline, Obama's beste Sprüche für seine Berliner Rede. My German's terrible, but that basically translates as, what would be the best words, the best catchphrase for him in this speech? The speech is over. We've seen that his central message is no to complacency. So not a top Obama speech. But of course, compared to JFK 50 years ago, Ich bin ein Berliner, there's a lot of, was he trying to get a catchphrase? Now, the Bild, in its options for various catchphrases, has this list, and one of the suggestions is, for example, Mrs. Merkel, I've been checking your Facebook account, and I saw that you were saying. Another suggestion, Mrs. Merkel, why don't you just tear down that firewall? So a lot of humour and satire. This one, this photo here, I can go to. There is perhaps fairly strong. If you look quite close at it, what do you see? You can see Stasi 2 there.
Stasi 2.0.
Yeah. So that's a protest at Checkpoint Charlie. Not today, but there are protests today. But the whole mood around Obama with this visit is about Edward Snowden and the Prism surveillance scandal.
And it's certainly something that the German Chancellor did bring up at that joint press conference. We're going to hear what she had to say in a while. Nicholas Rushworth, many thanks for that. I know you'll have more media buzz a little bit later on here on France 24. This issue of the Edward Snowden affair, the Prism, the cyber snooping, really coming just at the moment where this is all happening inside of just at the moment of this visit, and as we saw with Nicholas showing us the reference to the Stasi, the former East German secret police. It's particularly raw for the Germans. Yeah,
it's rough, but I would say that Prism and all the related revelations sparked a really strong reaction, both from his European counterparts, but also from European people. But I think it's a bit naive first, because there was a lot of other surveillance programs back in the 80s, back in 2005, where the NSA was amidst a big scandal, a big illegal wiretapping scandal, and there is just no way politically, technically, to prevent Obama and his administration and the NSA to do an intelligence agency job that is listening to what's happening in the world, and it has just grown bigger and more. All right, so a slight bit of hypocrisy, you say, on the part of European politicians feigning to discover that all this is going on. Let's hear what Obama had to say. In the speech, Barack Obama did broach cyber snooping and the trade-off between, on the one hand, civil liberties, on the other hand, intelligence gathering.
And as we remain vigilant about the threat of terrorism, we must move beyond the mindset of perpetual war. And in America, that means redoubling our efforts to close the prison at Guantanamo. It means tightly controlling our use of new technologies like drones. It means balancing the pursuit of security with the protection of privacy. And I'm confident that that balance can be struck. I'm confident of that, and I'm confident that working with Germany, we can keep each other safe, while at the same time maintaining those essential values for which we fought for.
Tyson Barker, did Barack Obama go far enough?
I think this is the starting point. There's no question that the disclosures about domestic surveillance in Prism and the phones have really damaged American soft power, particularly in Europe. And I don't think that there's an awareness in Washington of the level of damage that has come from this. But over the past 3 or 4 years, you've seen a real attempt to build confidence with European countries through the Passenger Name Record Accord, through the SWIFT program that allows the U.S. to track terrorist finance through the banking system. And that took a lot of work and effort to convince Europeans that there were sufficient checks and balances on how this data was going to be used. So in some ways, we are back to square one. This speech is the beginnings of rebuilding that confidence, but it's going to take years.
Anton Kozlov, the French satirical weekly Le Canard Enchaîné, today wrote a story about French cyber snooping and how a lot of it is based abroad so that it can escape the jurisdiction of the French authorities. To pick up on what Martin was saying a moment ago, it's a bit hypocritical to think that it's just the Americans.
Well, I think everybody snoops on everybody, politically and economically and militarily. So I think it's a very serious PR blunder. I mean, soft power involved, nothing more and nothing less than that. So I think let's not overstate this case. Certainly, it is very unpleasant when you learn that your Facebook account or your telephone is being tapped. But, you know, the fact that you don't know about it doesn't really change the situation that much either. So I think we have to be well aware that, you know, the Stasi did it, the KGB did it, and then American, French, and British intelligence did it too.
Andesine?
I think I would go even further and being the devil's advocate. We all know that our data is everywhere. And by the way, Prism is not my phone number, it's metadata. So they'll just check and work together to know whether some people call regularly other people.
They'll know where to find you if you say anything interesting.
But, everybody knew about that. And in the US, it's authorized by two laws, the Patriot Act that has been renewed, by the FISA Act that was adopted the first time in 1978, and then renewed by Congress. So we have Congress that knows about that whenever there is a problem, he conducts hearings, but is never willing to sort of restrict access to the data, which goes through a court. So it's not that there are not checks and balances, because even the Democrats are too afraid to be called soft on terrorism. And the FISA court, when it is asked to make public some of its decisions, is very reluctant to do that. So we know about that. And when we Europeans say this is terrible, it's true, the servers are in America. So they are controlled by all those IT giants. So there is not the thing that we could say extraterritoriality, whatever. And it is true that whenever there's a communication between an American and one of us in Europe, and this is the PR blunder, we're here. Now, what do we want? Security, etc. All those people putting information on Facebook, this is even worse.
All right, and we have a tweet on with the hashtag F24debate from Voce saying, didn't the Stasi defend its spying by claiming it had to protect its own people? Again, this brings us back to Berlin. Germans remember the Stasi, the East German secret police. They're particularly outraged. And Angela Merkel, well, she was drawn in to comment on it when she and her guest held a joint press conference earlier.
Although we do see the need for garnering information, there needs to be due diligence also as regards the proportionality. Free liberal democracies live off people having a feeling of security. And this is why an equitable balance needs to be struck. There needs to be proportionality, and that is something that we agreed on to have a free exchange of views on.
Now, ahead of this visit, there was this comment by the International Herald Tribune columnist Roger Cohen. He said Angela Merkel, who grew up on the other side of the wall, will be pressing Obama on surveillance. Given national anger, it's a political necessity for her. But indignation is not enough for Europe. It needs to step up and help America defend internet freedom. Jörg Wolf, your thoughts?
Tyson is right. The US has lost a lot of soft capital, smart power. With this affair, Germans are very sensitive to data protection. But many Germans also are always thought that the NSA is listening. The rumors have been there. There wasn't that much trust in statement that this wouldn't happen. So many commentators are now saying, "Hey guys, why are you naive? Of course this is happening." And another argument that is being put forward by the Interior Minister is that German intelligence has benefited from tips from their American counterparts to prevent several terrorist attacks. So yes, data protection is a sensitive issue here. But at the same time, Germans reveal so much on Facebook and Twitter and other social networks, and and who knows how strong data protection is within those companies. Maybe there's a technician who has access to this data also and can sell it or does who knows what. So there are also people who are saying that there's more oversight with what the NSA is doing than there is with many private companies.
Except that it's contractors that take care of 50% of the intelligence work. So, what's the oversight of Congress when Booz Allen sends its employees to touch very sensitive intelligence? If I am shocked by something, it is by the fact that now there are as many private contractors taking care of the NSA work as NSA people.
And to get back to Roger Cohen's point, can Europe do more to sort of take control of the situation?
Well, technically, no. It's impossible. The internet is built in such a way that data flows through the US. It's just naive to think that we can prevent our data or internet connections just to go around the US and not getting in. It's just ridiculous. But I'm a bit worried about what you said. We should not justify state surveillance or state snooping by saying people are sharing things online. It's totally a different matter. You cannot put those things in the same way. On one hand, you have people that are willingly sharing stuff, and then on the other hand, a state that is storing, because it's the case, they store everything that is that goes through their wires across the United States. So I'm a bit worried about this kind of justification.
Except that when the government wants access to information, they have to ask a court order, because
Yeah, but
this
the information is already
protected.
stored on NSA servers. They have to ask the authorization to get access to it, but they have it on their servers
But
already.
Google
They've
also
built-
stores data, and we don't know how long. There is no limit on how long even the IT corporations can keep the data, and this is another worry.
Right, and it's all beyond Europe's control. Again, we're brought back to what's the timing of all this taking place at a time when Barack Obama is going to Berlin for the first time in 5 years. And by the way, the Washington Post this Wednesday on its website pulling up the cover of the German news weekly Spiegel 5 years ago when Obama last came to Berlin. There you see the headline, Superstar. Today, though, calling him the lost friend, one whose policies can raise eyebrows in a relationship where the balance of power, according to Spiegel, is shifting. In an editorial that it penned, it said that it's no longer Germany, the new European power, has since long outgrown its role as America's model pupil, and it no longer automatically looks across the Atlantic for advice. Well, that certainly seems true when you see that, for instance, for his only visit to Europe so far, guess where China's new premier, Li Kengyang, went at the end of May? Well, there you see him. He's in Berlin. When you look at the way in which Germany's clout has increased within Europe, Tyson Barker, going to Berlin, would you say that it's a different balance of power than it was 5 years ago between the U.S. and Germany?
I don't know necessarily about between the U.S. and Germany, but definitely within Europe itself, the balance of power has changed inextricably. I mean, Berlin is the de facto capital of Europe at this point. Brussels is the de jure capital, but Berlin is where a lot of the decisions are made. And recognizing that, particularly in the very important geostrategic triangle between the U.S., Europe, and China, is going to be determinative of all three's policies in the next 10 years. As far as the erosion of admiration for the United States in Europe, I mean, I don't think that this is new. We've been lamenting that for 50 years. And anybody who says that the situation today is worse than it was in 2008 when Obama came to Berlin for the first time to give that historic speech doesn't remember the man in office at the time. But I do think it's important to get back to this issue of Prism and soft power. This is going to be the issue that defines the relationship over the next 10 years. This issue of data protection, this issue of privacy, the issue of e-commerce.
The relationship between the U.S. and Germany, or the relationship between the U.S. and Europe?
Between the U.S. and Europe, but with Germany in many ways playing a leading role. Because if we're not just talking about security, we're talking about business models. For these advanced industrial economies, the future of economic growth is going to be based online. All of our commercial transactions are migrating online. A lot of our commercial activity is migrating online, and a lot of that can be monitored. So making sure that we have a system of checks and balances that we can rely on is going to be very important for both sides of the Atlantic.
Jörg Wolf, is it the start of something wonderful, the way it was announced by David Cameron at that GA summit, the opening of those free trade talks? Or does it look like a bloody battle, the one that's just been outlined there by Tyson Barker over how you conduct business over the internet?
Why can't it be both? It'll be a bloody battle in the negotiations. Every country has strong interest and will negotiate hard. That's to be expected, and we have to find compromise and consensus and work this out so that we are not looking at relative gains. I mean, there has been, the study by Bertelsmann that it's Britain and other countries and the US who benefit much more than Germany would benefit from this agreement. But still, there's very strong support in Germany for this, because it's not about relative gains, but making the pie or the cake bigger in general rather than the individual slices. So the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership has strong potential, and it's also very important because for Europe is only strong in the next 10 years together, or Germany is only strong together with a strong Europe. Because you mentioned the big powers are the US, China, and Germany. That's not quite true, I believe. Germany might be the leader of Europe at the moment, and this can also change in a few years. But in the long run, I mean, not just in the long run, just in 10 years or so, Germany is a small country, France is a small country, Britain is a small country, and we Europeans have to realize this. We can only be players in the world. We can only maintain our growth, our values, if we are united. And this will be possible with this partnership.
Anton Kozlov, you heard there the call to not have discord, but discord is what we've seen a lot of within Europe. So how is Europe going to handle its trade negotiations with the U.S.?
I think it's very important to keep in mind something that hadn't been mentioned, that we're still in the midst of a very serious economic crisis, both in Europe and in the United States. So I would think that, of course, it would be wonderful if some kind of consensual solution could be found. But I think we're going to see that the United States and Europe are going to defend their interest. Within Europe, there is a great possibility of some kind of consensual approach. But I think between the United States and the European Union, there's going to be a serious issue. And frankly, this transatlantic bond, it's wonderful, but I'm not so sure how long it will last.
I think it's good news because everybody was saying that the US was only looking towards the Pacific with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And of course, it's for convenient reason that Obama is suddenly bringing that out again. But it's interesting in France that we've covered only the cultural exception and we're not thinking about the medium term and how it means that the US has realized that it needs to unite with Europe, probably, and also with other Pacific regions, probably to counterbalance the influence of China. So this, I think, could be good news.
So you're seeing a closening of ties coming up between the US and Europe, potentially. And
economic, when we say Germany is the leader of Europe, it is certainly the economic leader, but the US needs the UK and France for Syria, for instance, and for other subjects, rather than the Euro crisis.
Before we go, there's one topic that we often overlook, and that's the environment, and that's one that the Germans are very close to. They still resent Barack Obama's inability to deliver at a 2009 climate change summit in Denmark. This Wednesday, before that big speech, activists were out in the streets. And by the way, they weren't just protesting cyber surveillance. They also pointed to those upcoming free trade talks between the US and Europe.
This protest is about the planned free trade agreement between the US and the EU. This free trade agreement is full of all sorts of Trojan horses. Among other things, we're in danger of being flooded with cattle full of hormones, with poultry disinfected with chlorine, plenty of genetically modified food, and we want to prevent this.
Jörg Wolf, is there a real clash of culture when it comes to environmental issues between Germany and the US?
There is, especially on the genetically modified food, but I think it can be overcome. Some compromise, some solution should be found. I mean, that shouldn't stop this from being concluded.
All right, so a note of optimism there from Jörg Wolf, on which we will end. I want to thank you, Jörg Wolf, for joining us from Berlin. I want to thank Tyson Barker for being with us from Washington here in the studio, and Dessin Anton Kozlov and Martin Untersinger. I want to thank you for being with us here for the France 24 debate.